Erica.
Thank you. And where I
Thank
go.
you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to God Talk. Tonight we're talking about nonviolence, and this is Thursday, October 17th. And I'm just so happy to see you all. We have a pretty good group tonight, so I'm looking forward to a wonderful discussion. We always start with our introductions and an icebreaker. Introductions are the name that you want to be called by, and your pronouns, and which is, I think, important just to recognize that is really important for even a matter of life and death for some people. So we want to take that real seriously. And then our icebreaker question, Marco and I just got back from getting from a vaccine clinic. So I want to know how brave you are with things like shots and medical questions. So I'll start here. We're in Taos, and I am Carol, she, her, and I never had too much issue with. I always wanted to avoid any medical things that I could, like surgeries and stuff like that. But if I have to have a shot, then I don't. I'm pretty brave about it. It doesn't scare me inordinately.
Oh, I am by I go I think I'm by you.
You weren't late. You mean are you apologizing for being gone last week?
I am by I go.
We're happy you're back. Okay, so name and pronoun.
By cái cái by you by cái I cái by có a big go.
Did you? I know you said Marco, and people can call you King Marco if they want to.
Yeah, by
And he, him, but what were you saying about shots?
I can give it.
You think they're stupid? Well, you were pretty brave today, even though, well, I mean, you kind of bragged about it and got all tense, but then you were fine. Yeah, okay. All right, we'll just go in the order everybody kind of came online, at least that as I recall. So Suzette, you next, please.
Okay, I am Suzette, and she, her, and you want to know if I like shots or not? Unfortunately,
not
I
if
have
you
to
like them, just if you're brave about them.
I'm brave. I have to give myself a shot every week, so I had to learn how to be okay with it. But it depends on the shot itself. Like like last year, I got the flu and the COVID shot together, and I thought my arm was going to fall off. So I won't be doing that again this year. But I take it, I take it in stride that it's going to help me stay well. So that's my take on
Awesome.
it. Thank you.
Okay, Leo and Jared.
Go.
About shots, we just got our flu shot last week at the Kroger pharmacy. I don't mind shots. I'm pretty brave. Now, the one shot I am afraid of is the COVID shot because the COVID shot just knocks me out. So I'm not getting that any longer. Ever since I haven't taken it, I haven't gotten COVID. So yeah, but flu shot, yeah, I get the flu really bad if I don't take my shot. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't forget your name and your pronoun.
Oh, so I'm so sorry. My name is Leo, and pronouns are he, him.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jared. Pronouns, every pronoun that you can imagine are my pronouns. They belong to me. I have copyrighted them. And so additionally, how I feel about shots, yeah, like shots are fine. We just got our shots, as Leo said. But also, I do have some horrific experiences with shots because I don't know y'all if y'all ever traveled out of like the country, there's a lot of shots you gotta get, right? And so I remember there was a whole gauntlet of shots I had to get whenever I went to my homeland, the Philippines, for the first time in a hot minute. It was like 6 shots, like back to back to back, and I was like, "Can they all be in one arm?" And they were like, "No." And I was like, "Both arms?" I was like, "Oh," it was like, "Okay," and I was like, "Okay," so that like they like tricked me because like at first they were like, "Okay, so we're gonna do them in the arms, right?" And then the doctor came, and so there was like 4, so I got like 5 in the arms, right? And then he's like, I was like, okay, that's great, cool, we did it. I completed all my shots, and then there was one more shot I had to get, but it had to be inserted in the rear, right? Like that was horrifying, right? My body was not ready. I was like, you stop, you stop.
Like a kid.
Oh, like there's gotta be some sort of malpractice money that I'm getting out of this. Oh
You
my
may be entitled to compensation.
Yes. For a lollipop, at least.
For sure.
God. With like all these like different syringe like needles and all these different things, right?
Oh
And
goodness.
going. And it was, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh,
So I got shot trauma, but you know, we do the best with what we got.
That's right. Good on you for getting that. Okay, Craig Puckett.
Craig Puckett. My pronouns are typically he, him, but any pronoun will do. That's fine. And I'm pretty good with shots. I don't mind. I got a lot of padding, so they don't usually affect me too much. I actually had, I'm kind of similar to you, Suzette. I had my COVID and flu shot at the same time last year, and I definitely felt like run down, and my arm was super sore afterwards. This year I got just the COVID separately, and I had like no reaction to it this year. It was like easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl. So I would recommend separately, like a week apart, but I would still recommend again. But so far so good. Although, so brief aside, this week actually was this weekend's Sunday. I was not at church because I was at the ER for some really bad digestive issues. I'll just leave it at that. And they gave me a shot also in the bum, and that was the first one that's hurt in like decades. And I was like, I don't know if she hit this sensitive area, but that one hurts. But the other ones, I'm like, it's whatever. When I got my COVID shot, the lady at the CVS, man, she was like in, out, didn't even feel it whatsoever. So kudos to her.
Yeah, y'all are making us a little nervous because we got both. We both got both, so I hope we're not too down in the next few days, but we'll handle it whatever happens. So, all right, Kim.
I'm Kim, she, her. I'm not afraid of shots anymore. Not since I've had to start giving myself a shot for my migraines when I get them. I had both my COVID and my flu shot today in the same arm. I can only have shots in my right arm. I can't have anything in my left arm. So I had no choice but to get them in the same arm. So hopefully I won't suffer like you guys did. And hopefully I won't get as sore with it. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, we can commiserate if we we feel bad. Marco and I will keep you in our prayers too. All right, Lynn.
Oh, hi. I'm Lynn, she, her. And interesting that I'm listening to you guys because I had my COVID shot and my flu shot day before yesterday, one in each arm. They are sore. It seems like I don't recall which arm had got which shot, but my right arm is sore than my left arm is. And But I haven't felt bad other than that, just some soreness. And for the most part, I'm a person, whenever I see a health professional coming toward me with a needle, I look away. I don't like needles. I'm a person that and if I have to have labs done and they draw blood, I look away. So that's how I am about shots and needles in general.
Oh,
All right, Kreger.
I'm Kreger. Pronouns are he, they, or whatever. And yeah, the shots don't scare me. Last September, I had the COVID, the flu, and the RSV vaccine all on the same day. And then the next day, it felt like someone had hit my face with a brick.
Oh,
And so this year, it was just last Thursday when the cardiologist cleared me to go have, whatever vaccines I wanted. He didn't have a problem with it. So I've got an appointment tomorrow at CVS at 10 o'clock, and I'm going to get the flu and the COVID. I'm going to skip the RSV for now because I just don't think I'm that compromised to warrant an RSV, and they can keep that one. That one's really strong.
Okay. Well, good. It's just wonderful to hear all your stories. I like our icebreakers. They just give us a little piece of information about each person, and we just get to know each other a little more all the time. So tonight we are talking about the practice of nonviolence. This came up a little bit in one of our previous sessions, and I just wanted to explore it a little bit. So one of the chief examples that came up before in kind of comparing nonviolent approaches from leaders in the justice world, it was comparing MLK with Malcolm X. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts. And I've kind of looked into it a little bit just in terms of influences and legacy. And just kind of, so I think it's a little hard to say which approach is more effective. But I'd like to hear some thoughts on that.
Why can't go right?
Jared and Leo, I think if you have some thoughts off the top of your head, I just think that would be appropriate because of where our previous conversations led us. So I'd like to start with you guys if you don't mind.
yeah. Right.
Okay. As a person of color, right? With multiple like both sides of my family is going through a full-blown genocide. I actually don't really don't really like violence, right? That's like a thing that's like really big. But because of the social factors that I've seen historically, right? With like actual wars and like actual conflicts, right? Like there was so many. I don't know if y'all are aware of like how the history of the Philippines and the history of like Africa, but there are so many things that like non-violent resolutions that have worked, and there are so many nonviolent resolutions that have not worked in both of the genocides. And it is oftentimes the more severe problems, right? Like for instance, slavery. Like for instance, actual genocides. They often require literal like physical resistance. But for like things like policy changes, right? The rights to be respected of local individual minorities, right? Individual minority segments. I found historically, like absolutely, right? non-violent resolutions is ideal for these more reasonable situations. And so for me, it's always for like these serious things like the battle in Congo, of where everybody, you know, there are all these slaves making our iPhone parts and stuff, or the you know, controversially Palestine, you know, the war on the Strip that's occurring. It is these things. I feel like I wish that nonviolence worked. I do, right? I wish that nonviolent resolutions have historically worked, but I haven't seen that. And so it's like, it's hard. It's really hard because I mean, whenever you're talking about such a serious topic like genocide, like violence, like that, where people's lives are on the line, we all wish for a peaceful solution. I haven't seen one. Like, you know, with slavery, like it took an entire civil war for that to, you know, for people like me to be.
Wow. Good job.
There were people even at the time of the Civil War, you know, using peaceful means, like the Quakers, for example, and I mean lots of other religious groups. And you were talking about Africa, and what about Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela?
Yeah,
and
those are excellent examples. Yeah, absolutely, right. The people of Congolese are still being, you know, that's been a thing for ages, right? Just like the war in Palestine has been a thing for.
Man, you gotta blow the game.
There are things that can be fixed from what I've seen with nonviolent interventions, right? They're like, you know, we've gotten a lot of progress nonviolently, but there are certain things I haven't seen that could be fixed without violence. Because like for my family, I can say that we've gone. Look, it's called the Batan Death March. We've gone through an entire, like, my great grandparents don't remember their history because their parents died whenever they were like 6. That was World War II, right? That was Japan, right? That was so like that an entire war had to occur for that to end. And so it's there. I don't like that war has to be a thing in order for horrifying things like holocausts, genocides, to stop. But it's true, is how I feel.
Well, I don't want to be the only one bringing up other examples. Maybe other people have some ideas as well. One of the one I also want to bring up Gandhi. I mean, there was a lot of violence happening as India was colonized, and all the years, and for India to regain its independence, Mahatma Gandhi was very instrumental in using nonviolent ways to end that, to end the occupation and end the oppression. I want to bring up one other example that I just read a book called A Paragon. You mentioned Gaza and everything that's going on there right now, and I just finished this book that was written before the current conflict, but definitely in modern times. And it's just an excellent book. I would recommend it highly. But it's about 2 men, one Israeli and one Palestinian, who become just best friends and involved in groups like Combatants for Peace, which is a nonviolent group, but they I mean, just because you say nonviolence doesn't mean I think that people don't fight hard and that people don't lay down their lives. But these are both men who lost daughters to violence because of the fighting and the differences there, and so they, with their families, work very, very hard for peace. So I think there's a lot going on even now, even in the midst of war. There
Right.
are people using nonviolent means to try to stop that.
Right.
Who else has thoughts on this?
Well, when I think of violence, I think of violence that starts in the home, like in the home where I grew up. And I think that because of violence that begins at the home, violence is prevalent on such a larger scale. If, you learn stuff at home when you're growing up. And if, people grow up in a violent environment, they're more apt to behave violently or so forth later on in life. So when I think of nonviolence, I'm trying to think of how, a 6 or 7 year old child tries to, overcome their parent or whatever, with nonviolent solutions. And I'm not getting any in the top of my head here. So I just see, human violence or bad behavior from one human to another starts way before a bomb drops somewhere. That's just my opinion.
Yes, and I think feelings can be changed. I think that book that I was reading is a really good example of that. I think like the Palestinian man in the book started out as a soldier and then was imprisoned for 4 years for basically or maybe it was 7 years for basically nothing, as things happen in wartime in those places. So you think he would be a very hardened person, and then to deal with the death of a beloved daughter and come out for peace and come out saying, let's stop the violence, stop the violence. So I think minds can be changed. Where do we get our inspiration? Some of these people we were talking about, I mean, MLK was a Christian preacher. Malcolm X had a lot of Islamic influence. Gandhi was definitely Hindu, but he got a lot of his influence from people like Jesus and Tolstoy, and just very willing to look for the universal lessons within the universal truths. That's basically what he stood for, was the power of truth and love. And so I see that very strongly in my faith, but then I don't know. I haven't been, like Kreger said, maybe I'm being naive because I haven't been exposed to a lot of violence, not in my childhood, and I haven't lived through a war or anything like that. So so maybe it's just a matter of, I don't know, maybe I would feel differently if I hope not. I hope that these are principles that I would stand on even in the midst of being challenged, like the guys in that book did.
Well, I just feel like at some point in the evolution of the human species, young men, mostly young men, but some young women too, will just refuse to pick up a gun and shoot another human being that they don't know for any reason whatsoever. You can't imbibe me with some reason that it makes it right for me to shoot somebody I don't even know. And I just don't get it, why it's so easy, why it has been so easy throughout the course of human history for people who do nothing except stand there and get the younger ones to go out and die for them or to kill for them. I just don't get that. And so I don't have a gun. I hate violence. I can't stand violence. I don't even watch anything violent on TV. I watch House Hunters. Okay. No one gets shot. No one dies. Nothing burns down. Well, unless it was like,
And there's always a
Great House
happy
Fire.
ending.
So yeah, I can't even stand violent programs. And you know what? If someone comes at me with a gun, I'm gone because I just don't have any way to defend myself. Oh well, on to the next slide.
Well, a lot, and there were a lot of people that died in the fight, when people believe in nonviolence. I mean, they're willing to put their lives on the line, I think. And I mean, I just think of all the people that died in the marches and the sit-ins, and of course MLK himself,
Right.
dying from gun violence. But I think of all the inroads that were made as well.
Well, I
So
think it's interesting that you mentioned Gandhi because at different times in my life, I was a person who listened more closely to Malcolm X, um, and then later more closely to Martin Luther King. And so, as a person of color, growing up in those turbulent times in America, um, it was difficult to know um, who was making the better sense. I guess that's the way I'll put it. Not who was right or who was wrong, but who was making the better sense. Um, Dr. King he said, morally and practically committed to nonviolence. And so the marches, the civil rights marches, that was a tenet. It was understood. We get spit on, we get kicked, we get the water hoses. They sick the dogs on us. We will not retaliate. We can't. We just have to take it. And what he said is he believed that Christ furnished the spirit and Gandhi furnished the method. So he firmly believed that we should resist the evil without resorting to violence. Like tit for tat just didn't work. Um, and so he was always looking to, you've heard hate the sinner. I mean, hate the sin, not the sinner. And I think that was his belief. And I eventually moved to that side. In my 20s, I was probably what you call a hot-headed rebel, but it was the sign of the times for me. And then once I realized that Christian means Christ-like, then I had to pay closer attention to, you remember, what would Jesus do? The bracelets that
love
everybody
your
had. And
enemies.
so,
Love
yeah,
your enemies.
yeah. So nonviolence, I think, and I don't believe in violence. I'm a conflict avoider. And last thing I want to do is be in conflict with anyone. I'm the one that wants everybody to get along. I'm always trying to mediate or negotiate, differences between people. So yeah, I'm not a person who appreciates violence. However, in my younger years, I saw um, that there might be a need for violence. And then I eventually went to, well, but what am I showing when what were those civil rights marchers showing when the hoses were turned on them, or when the dogs were sicked on them, or when people were throwing rocks? Um, it's a more powerful statement to show love and to show acceptance, because you're looking for friendship and understanding, which is what Christ, you know, modeled for us and says we ought to do. I think it's harder to be nonviolent than it is to be violent. I mean,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
when you think about it.
For
So
sure, for sure. Cracker, did you have
yeah,
any that?
that's how I see it.
Oh no, I was trying to clap for for Caleb, and somehow my hand clap turned into something else.
Okay.
I'm bad with this button over here. Keep me away from this react button.
Well, oh, Craig?
I am so intrigued by everybody's thoughts. And yet I would be lying if I said I was not very conflicted on the topic myself, because as Jared mentioned, and as we can see by picking up history book, there have been inroads that have been made by 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 both methods. And if we look at, our semi-recent, even American history, we see that the protests and the marches that MLK led did so much for marginalized communities of color. And we also see that pushing back and saying, hell no, we're not going to take it, from the LGBT community, also did a lot as well. And I think I do not pretend to be the most educated person on this topic. Um, but I think also there's, um, not entirely, but there is somewhat of a difference in the approach and the, how should I say, the reaction to like what's being done. So if we look at some of the violent action that was taken against the peaceful protesters, like the Martin Luther King camp, um, there's a kind of a social revolution that's happening at that time around persons of color, and we're seeing institutions like push down against that. Um, and so there's this movement of peace and of visibility. And from again, what little I know and what ignorance I know, the more, I would say, more violent or more active protests from the LGBT communities, coming largely as a result of physical violence being a daily act by the institutions, like pulling people out of clubs,
Mhm.
beating them, harassing them, throwing them in jail, almost, I mean, this is not is not the same thing, but almost like attempting to actively genocide against an LGBT community. I know you can't genocide someone for that, but it is adjacent to or adjunct to that kind of thought. And so the physical violence there, the protesting and the rioting there is, it seems to me to be more of a pushback as a method of self-defense, as opposed to I am actively attempting to cause you harm. And a no, I will not live in the fear of the terror that you're trying to terrorize upon our community, and we've had enough of it. And then after that, I won't say stopped, but after that subsides, then comes the visibility, then comes the marches, and then comes the ability to approach things in a more peaceful manner once those folks stop being actively assaulted, abused, and harassed. And again, maybe that is just my ignorance, but it seems like different reactions to different types of activities, which is not to say that like the Black community was not being actively harassed. Obviously, that was also occurring. But it seems to be slightly different in that oh, thanks to that. In that there was, how should I say, at least some socially appropriate safe space, versus the LGBT community where there was no socially appropriate safe space, except for the space that was made, and then that space was then invaded and became unsafe. And so it was saying, like, we're going to have this. You're going to let us have this. And, you know, God be with you if you choose to let us not have this. So I don't know. Again, I'm not a historian. I don't know if that's an accurate read, but that's kind of my sense. And Lynn, you were there. Maybe you can tell me if I'm right or if you're like, Craig, no, you're dumb.
Well, I mean, everybody's going to have different perspectives. You're right. And I think there's no doubt that there's been some inroads made both ways. And certainly, I mean, MLK, I kind of consider the originator of so many of the justice movements, and just taking that nonviolent cue, I think helped a lot of things. And there was just a lot of legislation. There was a lot of reconciliation. Now we're going back to Desmond Tutu's language as well. Reconciliation. There was face-to-face. Some just, you know, getting to know each other, start ending the conflict that way. There was a lot of inroads made that way. But Malcolm X, I think some consider that a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement might have originated with some of his thinking, and the way that he pointed out the systemic racism, the way that he really illuminated how institutionalized hatred, racism in particular, was needed to be changed.
Well, it's safe to say that Malcolm X didn't necessarily believe in turning the other cheek, and that was the primary difference between him and Dr. King. And Dr. King, you know, felt that you should turn the other cheek, and Malcolm didn't. And it wasn't that he thought about imposing violence on anyone else. His attitude was pretty much just leave us alone, and we'll be okay. But you know, you keep oppressing us, you keep giving us a hard time about everything. So we're going to stand up and we're going to fight. There's that whole Black Panther movement, and you know, and the Nation of Islam and all of that. So there were, in Black America, there were warring factions It's just that you know, Dr. King, because of the NAACP and other organizations, um, were able to suggest, well, we're not going to win the war, you know, by violence. We've got to get legislation passed, and we've got to try to change the hearts and minds of people.
Yeah.
And so it's not that there wasn't violence from blacks, you know. I mean, read about a slave revolt, you know, because
Right.
you know there was violence. It's just that when King came along, he had um, organizations, and well, Dr. King was a minister, and the leaders, most of the leaders of the civil rights movement, were ministers. They were pastors. They were members of church, and so that's where the majority of those people came from, and they had full sway over their congregations. But
Thank you for
yeah.
that perspective. Leo and Jared have had been patiently waiting with their hand up for a little while.
No worries. Uh, I think my perspective would be like Craig said. I see more the violent acts not as violent acts, but more as self defense.
Mhm.
Because sometimes you have to meet power with power. Because especially, for example, if you're getting bullied at school, you cannot just turn the other cheek. You have to be able to defend yourself and stand up to the bully. Otherwise, it will continue to happen.
Mm.
And in this case, such as like violent protests, yeah, if it needs to happen, then I believe that it needs to happen. But also, I believe in nonviolent acts as well, that they do work. For example, Cesar Chavez, he was a farm worker. He fought for equal pay, for farm workers' rights, and he brought a lot of change um, by doing nonviolent acts. And his whole thing was based off Gandhi and Martin Luther King as well. But he broke.
AI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be quiet.
But I do believe in both. So, but yeah.
Well, I want to challenge you just a little bit on the school bully. Is it always just, I mean, what if you're you know, the little kid who can't fight back? There's lots of people who have won over the school bully without without learning you know, martial arts or something to get back at the bully. What about just of the power of love? What about the power? What about how, I mean, Desmond Tutu, I keep coming back to that, but that just that ministry of reconciliation, and how people forgave the people who had murdered their loved ones or cut their limbs off, or, you know, just horrible things. And they came back, and it wasn't a matter of saying, you know, this is okay that you did that. It wasn't like that at all. It
Right.
was like, but it was healing. There was still healing, and there was, without retaliation. There was just a better way. There was a way of these people just getting so fed
Right.
up, saying, stop the violence, stop the violence. We got it. There's got to be a better way.
Wait, but be mindful, because you say better, right? And I think
I say better about what?
yeah, and I think what we're saying is that it doesn't have to be a dichotomy. It doesn't have to be a this that.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be an up or
Yeah.
down, right? It doesn't have
Both.
good versus evil. You know?
What I was saying, okay, let's try nonviolent first.
Yeah.
But if the opponent or the oppressor is not willing to move or to concede that, hey, we want a peaceful way for out of this, then
Like there
I'm
are
sorry,
yeah.
I'm not the kind of person that's going to turn the other cheek.
Yeah. There are bullies that will never learn. You're right. Like there are bullies that kill people. Like
because I always
yeah.
tell my husband, I'm like, if someone's breaking into the house or if someone's threatening you with violence, you call the cops, and half the time they show up 30 minutes late. And what if someone's showing up with a knife? And I always tell my husband, your safety is your responsibility. Seriously, because so many murders happen all around, and it's like the cops just show up to get a report, you know.
Yeah.
But
what about Jesus saying turn the other cheek, and Jesus himself laying down his life?
Right. That's a great example. And King David killing the Goliath.
Mm.
Right? Like the Bible is fraught with violence, right? From heroes, right? From people who absolutely were great people, right? And were wonderful representatives of his will. And it's important that we don't stigmatize God's creation, right? We say that this is capital W, wrong, right? Like, because like it's not a this or that. We know that war sucks. We're not, no one in this chat, I don't think, is pro-war.
But by any means, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that I'm pro-violence.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It's not a dichotomy.
I'm like, what I'm saying, I believe in nonviolence, and like violent acts would be my last resort.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my point of view. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. Gregor said, bring your opinions, and if you have a mouth, bring your opinion. So
yeah,
That's
certainly
why I want to hear if Kim had something to say.
don't get mad at me.
No, I
guess
said
I'm
that.
just trying to figure out how we kind of figure out our own moral stance and where our faith comes into play with this, and while there is a lot of violence in the Bible, I think we don't see it from Jesus, and we see like even when was it Peter that I think that was trying to defend Jesus and saying, let me attack this soldier who's trying to hurt you, who's trying to arrest you. Jesus is like, no, put away your sword,
But he did do violence, because he did kick people out of a church who were trafficking and trading. But
he didn't kick people out. He turned the tables over and said this is wrong. But I don't know. I don't really think that's I mean, he didn't hurt anybody.
I don't. Well, like,
you mean violence toward another person in the purest sense? Yeah.
So property. Okay, I understand. Okay, I got you. What you mean? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, harming people was not on the menu. Yeah, he
did overturn the tables, and I'm pretty sure it says he whipped them out.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was he whipping. He was whipping. Yeah, he did whip people.
Now I don't know if he literally physically whipped them, or if it's like whipping as like a euphemism, or if it's like literally. Who knows? I do not. So here is where I have a controversial thought. I'm gonna throw out my controversial thought. It's a difficult topic. I'm just gonna speak with difficulty. Part of me, because there is even in the Jesus story, like you just mentioned, there is a difference of approach in the situation, and part of me wonders. I do believe literally in the divinity of Jesus. I don't know if you do or do not. That is up to each person to decide their own thoughts on that. But I think that Jesus has a higher perception than we humans do. And so when it comes to Jesus's statements to his disciples to like, do not be violent, even though violence is being committed against me, part of me wonders if that like commandment that he gave to them is about that specific situation involving divine insight that says, I know that what I do will have more profound impressions upon this world if you allow it to carry out in the way that I know that it's going to, even though I don't want it to, as opposed to picking up a sword and cutting off, literally, my legacy, because at that point it will just be a minor uprising and a footnote in history. So that is where, and again, even I just suppose this, but in myself, do I think, oh yes, that's what I think happened? No, I don't know. It's just a supposition. But there you go. I don't leave you with an answer, but I leave you with a question.
I want to just to see if I can lighten this up. I wish I had a could play this comedy reel that I saw on Facebook recently. It was speaking of Gandhi and his Hindu beliefs. I mean, there were some very deep-seated beliefs about nonviolence, but I think he did get a lot of his ideas, like I said, from Jesus and from people like Tolstoy, and just trying to find those universal truths. He came to the understanding of like non-belief, I mean of nonviolence, and just like I said, the power of love. That makes me think of like the ending of Harry Potter too. So kind of love wins out, and it wasn't so much the power of we're winning and they're not. I hate to bring up some with an author that's that controversial too, but anyway, but back to Hindu beliefs, reincarnation. This comedian was a Black guy that was just hilarious, and he started talking about, hey, you what about if they say that, if you come back, if you lead a really bad life, then you come back and have a harder time. So, how do I know that I wasn't like some slave owner back in my previous life? And maybe that's my statue that I'm forcing them to take down. And anyway, it's just, it was another perspective when you're thinking about other religions and religious pluralism. I think it's just interesting to think about, well, could I have had a hand in this? Could there be another way to think about this?
Has like
At the
karma,
risk,
reincarnation been a topic previously for
No, but
GodTalk?
I think we should talk about it. I
Oh,
think
that'd be a good one,
there
I
has
think.
been lots of there's been a talk. Several of our topics have brought up discussions about religious pluralism, and so I think that's something to talk about. So
any thoughts from Kim or Suzette before we have to close out at the risk of being inclusive?
When I have something to say, I'll say it. But I've really been learning a lot from you guys, and I think that it's valuable sometimes to just listen and hear the experiences of other people. And that's what I'm doing tonight. So I'm here, I'm present, but I didn't really have an authentic thing to contribute. So, but I do agree with a lot of what's being said. So good conversation.
yeah.
This is the last point about nonviolence. I think perhaps the admonition that thou shalt not kill might be at top of mind, if you're talking about nonviolence in itself. Thou shalt not kill. So
Kim, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. I don't want to put you on the spot at all, but don't want you to leave without having the opportunity to say anything if you would like.
No, I'm good. I'm just trying to, feel where I'm trying to fit in somewhere, trying to feel, a community I might be able to belong to. So I'm just right now listening and just seeing how this goes to see if it's going to be a right fit for me for what I'm looking for. So
Awesome.
I just enjoy listening to y'all talk for right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're very happy to have you. Next
you.
week, our subject is eco-justice. And just like always, like Kreger always says, you don't have to do any homework. But just so you know, that's what we're talking about. We don't always announce what the subject is beforehand, but that's what it is next week.
And I do
Only
have a
thing,
comment. I'm sorry. Just really quick up to Kim. If you have something that you're passionate about, and it can be part of what we do for the online church or with the online church ministry, then please share that with me, because we are looking for, it doesn't have to be a committed thing where you're doing something every week, but if you have a gift or you have something you want to share, just let me know or Carol know, and we'll try to find that place for you, because we want you to feel like you belong.
Okay, thank you very much. I will.
Kreger, you were about to say something?
no, I was just going to tell Kim the only thing you have to come to God Talk is a mouth and an opinion. That's all you need.
How about Craig Puckett? Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just gonna mention, so next week, Adrian and I are, well, I guess he now has the choir rehearsals on Thursdays, but we'll both be out next week due to a trip to Rhode Island for a friend's wedding, so we'll be
Ooh,
missing
nice.
that session. But I will
Enjoy.
ask for your prayers, not just for travel mercies, but because I have been having some digestive health issues, and I hope that I am going to be feeling well enough next week to actually make the journey. So if you can keep me in your prayers, I will greatly appreciate all of you.
Done.
Of course, of course. And speaking of prayer, Kreger, would you close this out?
Absolutely. Holy God, we're grateful for this another episode of God Talk. And wow, we had the controversial topic tonight, huh? Nonviolence and violence. And so, what a great discussion and so many different opinions. But all who come into this space know that this space is safe. We can express our ideas, our thoughts, our vulnerabilities. And at the end of the day, we know that in this room, there is love. There is nonviolence in this room. So we're grateful for everyone who's come tonight. We're grateful that Kim is here with us tonight, and hope that Kim will continue to join our group. And in the meantime, we pray for Craig and Adrian as they have travel mercies for next week, and that Craig will be well enough to actually go on that trip, healing and travel mercies. And for the rest of us this week, help us to just breathe into your light and love, like several times a day. Just notice that you're beating our hearts. Notice that, God, you are breathing our breath. Let us notice that you are in our lives constantly, and let us be grateful and pay homage to that. In Christ's name, we are grateful as we speak. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Love y'all. See you
Love you
next
too.
week.
God bless you.
And do you want to do it like in a phone call type way, or I'll get her. I'll find her. Right, I have her online.
have a great week, everyone.
You too.